Hey everyone, Jason Alphatone Audio back again, and today I want to talk about MIDI cables, specifically MIDI cables that are going to be good for use on your pedal board. So let's say you go out, buy a new pedal, and you've just got good old-fashioned full-size MIDI jacks on there. Go out and you grab a MIDI cable, and you go to plug it in, and you realize how far these things come up on the side of your pedal. That's probably about 1.5 inches on there. Now, difference between an inch, 1.5 inches on a pedal board is basically the difference whether you're going to fit everything on there or not. But what if there were a different MIDI plug? They were right angle and save you all that space. And even better yet, what if you could actually rotate the pins on that MIDI plug so you could actually control the exit angle? So you could actually get two side by side, one out the front, one out the back, and you don't have any width wasted on the pedal. This is what we're going to talk about today. These are the Switchcraft 05DL5MX right angle rotatable mini jacks, and we're going to do an assembly on one. So let's get into it. So when you open these up, first thing you'll notice it has screws a little bit weird on these. It's kind of like a Torx blade combination. I just like to get a blade. Opens up just fine. So you have the screw. You have that piece with the pins and the solder connections on the back. You have two sides to the shell. Of course, you have your boot, and then you have this little strain relief piece. What it gets, you're just supposed to crush under cable, but the cable we're going to use on this today doesn't fit, so we're just going to toss that and not worry about it. Speaking of MIDI cable, the cable we're going to use today is Mogami W2948, which works well with this. There are some, if you really want to save space on your pedal board, there are some smaller MIDI cables out there. For example, Bestronix makes a couple. This is actually their low profile. This is their CA0363. It's actually star quad cable, what they call it. So you can use it for microphones or whatever, but it's good to use for MIDI just because it's for conductors and a shield. And they also make one that's a little bit bigger, like more full size, which is their CA0345. But I tend to stick with Mogami for most things, so that's what we're going to go with today. One of the things that makes this particular plug a little bit challenging to assemble is if you just look at a standard 5-pin MIDI plug, they basically have the little, this is the Neutrik Rian 5-pin straight plug that we saw in the very beginning of the video. You actually have like little solder cups at the end of the solder pins that you can kind of lay your cable into, or like lay a little bit of solder in ahead of time. It looks just like an XLR cable. But on this one, on the right angle one we're going to do today, you basically just have the back of the pins, they're just circular, and you don't really have a pocket. So what we're going to do is we're going to just take the stripped wire, and it's going to just go right inside of there. Now in the very back, which is probably impossible to see in the camera, you will see there's a little divot that goes all the way through, and that's going to help us out because that's going to allow a little bit of solder to flow around that pin and actually go inside and connect with the solder that we already have on the wire when we tin it. So I've got my MIDI cable stripped back a full inch on this, and you see we've got our 4 conductors, red, green, white, and black. There's color coding, and then we've got just a spiral shield. Now, when I strip this insulation off these conductors, that wire, even when tin, is going to fit inside these posts on here. The problem we're going to have is with the shield, just because it's too thick to go inside, and I don't want to just kind of like cut it flush with the other ones and just get a drop of solder just holding on the outside. I just want something a little bit more robust than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to replace this shield with a different piece of wire. Now, and basically all you need is really just kind of like any wire. I have always just little bits of scraps, like this is some old multi-channel stuff around. What I personally like to use is just a piece of like 2314, good old-fashioned guitar cable. I'm going to strip off at least 1 inch. And I'm just going to take the center conductor out of here. And one of the reasons I like to use the 2314 for this is because that has a clear insulation on there. So when I look at my existing colors, I have 5 distinct colors, and I'm not going to get confused or make a mistake during the assembly. I mean, I've done it before where I just have like a black wire or a white wire, something like that, and you just have to be careful to make sure you should take one of your conductors and actually mix it up with the shield. So it's just nice to have 5 different colors if you can manage it. Just one way to idiot-proof the process. I'm going to strip a little bit off that, and I'm going to leave about, I don't know, maybe a 1/4 inch on this, not too much. And I'm just going to cut that off. Soldering iron is heating up. I'm going to tin this piece. Pretty generous when you tin that. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece that I tinned, and I'm just going to stick it right down in the middle of all those wires and give it a little squeeze. Okay. Once we have that, I'm just going to solder the whole bundle together. Give it a second to cool, and like to give like a good little tug on it just to make sure you put enough solder in to go all the way down to hit that conductor. And once we have that, I want to take a little piece, I don't need that much, just a little piece of heat shrink, because you can get a little bit of a sharp edge on these solder joints sometimes, and I don't really want that poking a hole through my insulation. So I'm going to just wrap that up in some heat shrink. Stick it down as much as I can. And then I like to come back with one more. And again, I don't need quite that much. This is 1/4 inch. Just go over everything. And once you have that, I'm going to kind of get these organized, and I always go in the same order, which is red, green, the shield is in the middle, white, black. So I'll kind of organize them that way. And then one cut across, just to register, and now everything's the same length. And that should be plenty of length for us to be able to put this together pretty easily. So from here, it's just a matter of stripping these and tinning. Get a good twist on these. Make sure everything's nice and tight. Okay, let's tin these up. Now again, when you tin these, a little bit of solder, just a little bit. If you get too much, it's not going to fit in there. Okay, you may have to do, see them kind of as I open these up, maybe just do one at a time. Make sure it's as tight as you can get it. Bring in the iron. You could probably even just put a drop of solder on the iron. Yeah, just enough to hold it together. Definitely using less than I normally would. Okay, that looks about right. So let's get this in the vise and let's assemble. Now before you assemble, I suggest you actually take each one of your conductors and try to fit it in, just to make sure you didn't put too much solder on it. You can see this on this green one, I have a bit too much. So I'm just going to drag tip of my iron over it. Maybe give it a little flick, and that solder will bounce off. And then that one fits, and all the way around, just to make sure that everything's going to go in. And it's just going to give you a much better connection. Plus, it's going to help hold the work in place when you actually bring the solder in. I talk about the prep and the control a lot, making sure that your materials are always in control. So when you bring in the solder and you soldering iron and you bring in the solder, then nothing's going to move and everything gets assembled exactly where you want it. So all 5 of these look good. So you can see I have the part oriented. So I'm going to start at the top, and after every one, I'm just going to, because you can try to, if you just try to put it in and try to do all 5 at one time, you always get the soldering iron in like weird angles. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate it so that one pin is on the top, and I'm actually going to rotate the part after every single joint so I can always have my hands where I want them. So like I said, I'm going to start with red. This is my order I always go in, and I'm going to bring in my helping hand, which again I don't use too often, but it's good for this because there's no strain reef clamp or anything to hold the cable while you're working on it. Just bring it in, and you don't need a whole lot of solder on this. And again, when it comes to tinning, notice I didn't pre-tin these the pins in there because I want that open so I can actually fit the wire inside. But we're going to be just fine. So, and you can see the tip of my iron is just about as wide as that pin. So I'm just going to heat it up a little bit. A little drop of solder. And as soon as you see it start to flow, done. So that's one. Again, I'm going to rotate my connector. Make things easy on yourself, people. Don't be in a hurry with these. Green. Just going to hold this in place. Okay. 2 down, 3 more to go, and I'm just going to go around and do the exact same thing 3 more times. And that's the assembly. Went pretty smooth. You can make a mistake if you just feed too much solder in. These pins are pretty close, and it's pretty easy to actually solder 2 of the pins together. If that happens, don't worry about it. Just get out the solder wick and just get in there and just take that little bit of solder off and just keep going. And also that solder wick, if you do get solder like inside the pin, the solder wick should draw that solder back out so you can get your conductor back in. So let's put it together. So when you go to assemble, you have to think about how you want it. You see these tabs here on the barrel. There are 8 of these, so there's 8 different positions you could have these. And on the outer shell side that you put the screw in, sorry, this side you don't put the screw in, you see there's one little tooth in here. And then all you're going to do is you're just going to lay that in there at the angle that you want it and kind of just turn it back a little bit until you feel that that tooth is in between one of these teeth up here. Bring your wires down, bring your boot up, and make sure you can either go this way on the wires, like take them the short path, or you can go the long way with the wires. And that's one of the reasons I tend to strip a little bit more than what you need. I mean, it obviously makes assembly easier, but it kind of gives you that option depending on how much cable you actually want to feed up in there. I tend to take the short path, but just be careful when you drive the screw up through there to the assembly that you're not twerking on your individual wires too much. You just sandwich it together. Just get a little twist, make sure. And that is it. This is our Switchcraft 05DL5MX right angle rotatable MIDI plug assembly video. these plugs are great. If you really need to save space on your pedal board, these will definitely save you at least an inch of width compared to a standard straight plug. The other good thing about it is they're Switchcraft and they tend to make very good connectors. This one is no exception. It is a very heavy duty metal connector on this. I've never had a bad one out of the box, and I've done hundreds of these, and they're just great. I really like them. So if they are a little bit expensive as far as the individual parts are concerned, and therefore if you just get the cables through a manufacturer or an assembler like myself, that's one of the reasons why these tend to be a little more expensive. Is even in bulk, the part is just about 3 times the price of a normal MIDI plug. But if you need to save the space, there's really no substitute for it. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you did get something out of this video, please give me a like and a subscribe. Leave me a comment. Let me know how you're using MIDI on your pedal board, and I will see you next time.